Hey, Spud here with my pal Dale again. Gonna have another edition. I haven't really named it, but I guess we could call it a Spud and Dale Tales.
Dale Tales, I like
Dale
that.
Tales. Basically, just we've always gotten a ton of questions about band tension and chain tension and all these different things in lifting that can make you stronger, obviously, can make you better, faster. I mean, that's what everybody wants. So we wanted to give our version of how we got started with it, how it kind of evolved, and sort of what happened, how we utilized it, in our competitions. Dale has his take and I have my take, and so we're just going to talk back and forth about it, and hopefully the goal will be to sort of explain it a little better so that maybe somebody who didn't quite get it or didn't know how to put it into their training system or their program or didn't quite understand why you would do it. We're just going to try to hit on as many spots as we can about that. My first thing to talk about is the broomstick, right? So my first introduction to tons of band tension was way back in, I want to say the late 90s with Donnie. We were trying all kinds of different things, and one day we came in and we had the fat bar on the monolift, and then Don put every single band that we had into place on there, and we were going to do box squats with it. And at first I was looking at it, I was like, how the hell are we going to do that? I was like, we've never done that before. So we had the strong band, the average band, the light band, the monster mini, and he even put the minis on there. So we had every single band in the house on there, on the monolift that day to start squatting. And for some reason, once we got going, I was telling Dale it was like a duck to water, and I was just smashing it and banging it out, and Don was just, he was lifting fine, but at the same time, it wasn't quite as smooth or as easy for him. So, during the session, I could tell it was aggravating him because I was just smashing him. So, we're talking a good bit of band tension for the first time with a fat bar, trying to squat with a straight fat bar. And if any of you guys have ever squatted with a fat bar, it's terrible. It's hard to hold. You really can't negotiate with it too much. So, we get through the session, and this is one of those few times where I'm sort of grinning a little bit because, it was always a competition, and I got a little edge on him this time. Well, he goes and grabs the broomstick, and he gets the Sharpie, and he walks up to me, and he marks the Sharpie right where my shoulders are, and then he marks the Sharpie right where his shoulders are, and then he writes my name. This is Spud's height, and this is Don's height. and he goes, that's why you did it. That's why it was so much easier. I had to go this much further than you. So, and I was like, okay, that's okay. So basically it was a yay for me day. So, we had a lot of fun, but at the same time, that was about the same time that everybody sort of started doing a ton of band tension. So as the years progressed, we obviously Louis and other people, they had different ways of talking about it, and Louis' thing was it's a supermax where you're overloading the top part of the portion of the lift so much that it forces you to obviously move faster, accelerate through the lift, but it also adjusts your brain to that type of weight situation and dealing with it. Because at the time we hadn't really dealt with, I would put somewhere in the 900 range, or 900,000, not that much in band tension, but we weren't adjusted to that weight yet. So that was another thing about the bands, was all these bands, the mental aspect of the band. So if we were trying to figure out band tension, there were numbers out there, but we had general numbers. Every blue band was worth 100 pounds, which was a strong band. So we'd have 4 bands on there, 5 bands, 6 bands on there. So we have 600 or 700 pounds of band tension on there. That changes your mental aspect as well as the physical aspect, because that much weight crushing you, you're either going to adapt or you're going to hit the bricks. So that was my first introduction to the band tension. But the broomstick is just, this is awesome. Anyway, I'll let Dale talk about his bit some.
Oh, I remember the first time I came in, and I was kind of the new guy coming into the group, and that's sort of intimidating to start with, and then you're like, you're gonna do bands. Okay, I got bands. Okay, I've just squatted with bands before. And then they put a blue band on there. I'm like, all right, I got this, and I was kind of the same with him. I'm not the tallest guy in the group, so I'm hitting some stuff pretty good. And then they're like, all right, well, let's put another band on there. And I was like, all right, cool, I got this. And we hadn't even put any weights on there, and we got 2 blues on there. And I'm like, all right, okay, it's getting a little hard. And then I look down, and there's a 3rd damn blue. I'm like, what are we doing, guys? Are we gonna actually put any weight on the bar? And that was just a smack in the face. It made my head spin. It made me think totally different about training, because I had never done a max effort, lift that was above what I'd ever picked up before, and been able to do a few reps with it. So that was kind of a whole new spin on my way of looking at training. Like you said, with those supermax weights, it kind of opened my eyes to where I was like, okay, well, I can squat 700, but I can pick up 850, with band tension on there. So that you can grow by kind of leaps and bounds when you start adding that sort of stuff in there with those sorts of just monster band tension. So that was one of those things where, I wanted to throw every damn band I could on there now, to get that benefit. But you can only do it so long. That's one thing that you were still kind of figuring out when I came in, and I was like, all right, I want to do bands. I want to do bands. And you're like, no, you don't, and you found out kind of what works best for pretty much everybody in the whole group, just with trial and error, right?
Yeah. So this is my opinion. It's universal. We started with 3-week waves. We do 3 weeks and then we changed to something else. So it was an accumulation of the band tension over 3 weeks. And what we found was, the first week is you figuring it out. The second week is usually your best week, where you actually perform the best. And the third week, because you're beat up from the bands and how much pressure and how much they tax your whole body, nervous system, muscles, everything, the overload. Usually the third week you either barely matched your second week or you actually went back a little bit. Mm-hmm. So generally 2 weeks on the bands was usually the top end of before you started shutting down. At least that's what I found in general for most people. You got 2 weeks and then maybe a third if you really want to try, but by that time your brain is just already shutting you down and trying to figure out how to keep you from doing it. So.
Yeah, that's the thing that I remember most about doing the bands. That you've got this thing, okay, I'm gonna do 3 blues and a green, or 3 blues and a purple, on that first week, and it's gonna suck because you're not used to it. It's gonna be a smack in the face. And it's one of those things where you kind of a sadistic, you look forward to the pain sort of thing. And it's still, like you said, you're adjusting to it, and you'll have an okay night. And then that next week you say, okay, well, I'm gonna do that plus something. So you've already got a mark set where, you did 3 blues and, 3 plates. Well, I'm gonna do 3 blues, 3 plates, and a purple band, for the same rep. That's the goal, at least.
So, that comes back around to and everybody has their way of describing it and figuring it out. It doesn't matter how you say it. Supermax phase, circumax phase. A supermax phase, as far as what we figured out, was, 60% band tension in most cases, maybe 70%, and then 30 to 40% bar weight in general. But the idea was to, back then we were all doing full gear, which is making a comeback, by the way. So we would do full gear, and again, it was all about your mindset. We were lifting in briefs, and we were doing the box squats because that amount of band tension or chain tension, it's really tough to do them on a free squat and not kill yourself. So, but it's also with the box, it's the slight relax on the box, not a let go, but then the re-acceleration into the lift where you're overcoming way more force than you would on a regular, squat. So that's the whole idea of putting so much band tension on there. And what we did was we'd have, like I said, 60 to 70% band tension and then 30, 40% weight. If my numbers go off, let me know, because sometimes I just cloud out. But we would do it. We would do it in briefs, and not the full gear. So the idea was the extra band tension is going to help you mimic what you're going to do in the squat suit, but it also, you're in briefs, or if you're raw, that's fine too. It works either way. You just got to adjust the numbers and you got to adjust how you do it. But the idea was to get your body accommodated to more than what you were planning on doing in the meet. So in general, if I was trying to squat 1200, I was trying to get 1250, 1300 in band tension and weight. So I would do the first week was just getting in a groove, getting in a rhythm, and then the following week was the week where I would add the extra band, or we'd add the extra plate. So I would have a certain set number. Say I wanted to squat 1100, we'd have we'd have 3 blues. I think the very last time before my worst meet ever, I had 3 blues of green and 6 plates on there. So it was pretty close to 1,300 pounds in tension. And it was, when you picked it up, and I've told him many times, it was one of the most crushing things I have ever picked up, and I'm surprised I didn't black out. The whole world just went whoosh, it pulled in, and all you can focus on is that shit crushing you. Just literally smashing you into the ground. And again, it's an adaptation thing. Either you're going to survive, or you're just going to say take it and you're done with it. But in the same breath, I was so well adjusted that I could have taken, had I not had the quad injury, I could have taken 1300. And at the New York meet in 2006, I actually took 1151. And it was, and I should have taken 12 that day. That was the gold day. That was the day my squats were just smashed on and, there. But I didn't. But what I'm saying was the preparatory phase and that we did with the bands got me ready for it. And when I went to go pick up the weights were not. They didn't feel anything like you imagine in the field, which is what you want. You want to transcend the mental aspect of the game where your body's saying, hey, let's get the hell out of here. Let's run for the hills. We're not supposed to do this. We're not meant to do this. It's one of those. That's one of those things where those type of things prepare you for the meet. Mm-hmm. At least that's what I found.
100%. There's nothing like that feeling when you take your max effort squat at the heaviest thing you're going to lift that day, and you pick it up and you're like, I got that, because of all the prep that you've done. You picking up, like you said, 1250, 1300. So when you pick up, whatever it is, it's not ever going to feel as heavy as what you just felt. 8, 9, 10 weeks later, way back when you're getting your central nervous system tuned up to handle that sort of weight. And I think, tension and weight-wise feels the same the weight feels a whole lot heavier when you've got band on there if it was all equivalent across the board. Like you said, it just feels like it's pulling you, pulling you to the center of the earth. It really does. So when you go to pick up straight weight, it's not that bad. You kind of get excited. You're like, oh shit, here we go. It's gonna be good. That's a good feeling, and that's where the heavy bands and, for me, a lot of the heavy chains come into play, because it makes everything feel lighter. Sounds weird, but it really does.
Yeah, that's really the whole goal, is to when it comes game time and comp time, because comp is totally different than your gym lifting. Is for the comp, when you go to the competition, is for everything to be on and ready to roll and feeling easy. Obviously there's some struggle, but you want to eliminate the I'm not ready for that aspect of it, which is why you train the whole cycle, is to eliminate those butterflies and that I'm not ready for this, or the naysayers in your brain that come flooding in at the competition time to try to keep you from doing these things.
So where did you like to put the bands with the supermax, the heaviest tension you're gonna do in a cycle? Where did you want to put that in your training?
My favorite time was 16 to 14 weeks out from a comp. I felt like that was far enough away to get my body pushing my nervous system and getting my physical capacity to deal with the weight, pushing that up. I liked it about 16 weeks out because it's sort of it's an adaptation thing as well. Is your body's going, holy shit, we just got through doing that. So the rest of the cycle is, it's hard, but it's not as taxing as the band cycles. And I felt like 16 or 14 weeks out, it gave you enough time to recoup physically from the destruction of the bands. They just totally tax you and physically just beat you into the ground. And if you do them too, my opinion, if you do them too close to meat, it just shuts you down. You can't peak for the meat. You can't get your body to continue to take that strength that you just gained from doing 110 or 105, 110% in your briefs. You're trying to keep that momentum going on into the meet.
Yeah, we all have our different, training cycle lengths that we like. You always like what I would consider really long meets, or training cycles, and I like a little bit shorter with heavier weight. You like doing triples, a lot of heavy triples and doubles and stuff like that, where I like singles and doubles. And I would always like to put my bands about 12 weeks out, 13 weeks out. I feel like I could do 2 good weeks of bands and then almost take like a vacation week for me. Let everything rest, let everything heal, and then start my weight cycle. I like putting that in there, ahead of time, and then doing a little bit shorter cycle seemed to work well for me. And I would try to incorporate a little bit of chains after that too, because the bands really smash you, but for some reason I really like chains. And I don't feel like they kill me as much as the bands, but I still get a lot of that same benefit. How much did you use chains in your training cycles?
Most of the chains, there's a lot of off-season stuff with the chains. In retrospect, and me and Dale and I were discussing this earlier, because we relied so much on the bands. We did a lot of chain stuff too, but we didn't conceptualize. I didn't conceptualize as much of adding ridiculous amounts of chains and including that into a 2 or 3 week run where you're trying to accumulate, keep pushing that up like you would a band cycle. So, And of course, we didn't have 8 jillion chains, and it was shortly thereafter, maybe a year or two, that everybody started doing ridiculous amounts of chains. And what we're trying to get at is, and so you can do the chains just like you do the bands. So you can you can make it a supermax thing, you can make it a circumax thing, and all that means is, supermax means again, 60-70% chain and then 30-40% bar weight. In the chain case, probably a little more bar weight most of the time, right. But it's still the same idea, is picking up way more than you would ever deal with on a normal basis. Say you were 800-pound squatter, you really can't pick up 800 every single week unless you're, a couple of guys who are just out in the freaks. I couldn't recover from that. I mean, I've done periods of time where I did do that, but I just couldn't recover from it. So I think that if I had to go back in time, I probably would have. Either I would have put the chains on the front side of the bands or on the back side of the bands, extended out the length of the cycle just a little bit more, so that if you want to say it, you can get your strength preparatory phase a little bit better before you head into the comp phase. Where the comp phase is where you're cleaning things up, getting more technical. You're still doing heavy weights, but the essence to me is you do less percentage, but you do more volume, and you just get better and better, and you clean up everything. So had I had that back then, had we, because we were so excited about bands and we were so excited about everybody squatting 1,000 pounds, that we just lived, breathed, and just slept with our bands underneath our heads, and so that's all we thought about, and we didn't really jump into the chain phase. But then that started picking up, like I said, a couple of years afterwards. And
yeah, I really like the chains, like you said, but I would consider the prep phase, before your cycle started. So I would use the chains to get me ready for the bands. So it's kind of like an introduction, like a dipping your toe in the water, because they're not as awful as the bands are, but you throw enough chains on there. I mean, I remember, several squat sessions where I put every chain in the house on,
And that's about 13 a side.
We filled these babies up. I think, we were even using the adjustment loops on there to hang chain on there, every chain in the house.
Yes, they're about 15 or 17 a piece, and we had 13 a side on there. So you can figure out how much that was, and then throwing bar weight on there too. So it's we're obviously overloading the top portion of the lift an insane amount, and you're either going to get it or you know.
Which that's one thing I was telling him that I think really made me technically sound. Like, I'm strong, I guess you would say, but technically, if I had everything right, that's when I was really strong, because my levers were right. And doing that supermax work where you've got to be in that perfect position to stand up with it or to take it out over your face on a bench press. That proper starting position is so key in a lot of the lifts. It's something that you just can't get around. If you have a shitty pickup with bands, you're not coming up. Same thing with a bench press. If you got a soft hand out with bands, it's not locked out. It's not going to stay there. So that's one thing that it really taught me, is that perfect pickup. It makes everything easier from there. I mean, everybody's seen that crappy pickup, and everybody's like, they're not going to get it, But when somebody picks it up, they're like, okay, that guy's going to hammer that, And that's one of the main things that heavy stuff taught me, even like you said, before your cycle started in that prep phase.
So when you were doing that, what would you say, how much chain, I can't remember, but how much chain were you putting on there? Do you remember?
Normally I would do kind of 2-week waves, like you said, and it would be probably around, I would do like 50% bar weight, and then I would add chains on at the end until I could do whatever my rep range was. I didn't have a certain percentage. I was kind of one of those based on how you feel that day. You know, if you're having a crappy day, you know, your RPE is going to be super high when you're, you know, you're not actually training where you need to be. But I mean, I was looking back through the old training logs and, you know, putting consistently 8 chains, 9 chains on, you know, on the first week, and then the next week, you know, when you try to ratchet it up, keep that same bar weight, and you try to do, you know, 10 chains, you know, and I looked back on some of my logs and I got 10 chains for a double and then put 11 on and missed it, you know, and nope, I'm not gonna miss that. I came back and hit 11 chains for, you know, it might've been an ugly single, but it was, you know, it was probably, you know, a 50-50 almost. I like using that heavy, you know, chain load.
So you consider that more of a circa, wouldn't you?
Yeah. It's not going to be the overload all, you know, to where you're, you know, above where your max is. So that, yeah, you could do that.
So what would be your opinion of a circa versus a supra, as far as an explanation to a person who didn't conceptualize it as well, you know, because they just haven't done it, or they haven't put it in their cycle yet?
Well, that's kind of where your workload is, you know, so that's where you're going to get the most kind of overall lengthened out benefit in your training. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of your training, where you can vary your weight, vary your reps to accomplish that, you know, 90%, 95%, somewhere in that happy window, to get actually, you know, muscle strong, get everything in line.
To get adapted to it?
Yeah. And everybody's a little bit different. Like I said, I like doubles. You love triples, and you know, I remember you keep hammering me. I'm like, Spud, what should I do? You're like, do triples. You know,
He liked to do his own thing. So.
I fought him. No, I fought you tooth and nail on that.
And that's fine. I mean, everybody's got to kind of discern what works for them. And you were a double and single guy, and you know, I was a triple and double, and then like on the supermax stuff, you know, the end goal was, you know, you weren't going to do a double, you were going to do a single. Mm-hmm. But your whole goal again was to be over, to be able to handle the what you wanted to do in a meet easily, with less gear, and not in the competition. So that makes sense. Anything else you want to add as far as a guy cycling this, or?
Yeah, I can talk all day about different things that we've done. I guess the biggest thing is don't be afraid to try anything and everything. Like you said, you don't know what you don't know. Put chains on there, put bands on there, you know, load them up, see what your body responds to. It's not ever wrong unless you don't do it. You know, the only thing that you can do wrong is not trying something. You try and it doesn't work, okay, try something different. That's the biggest thing, is figure out where it fits for you and try everything you can, because you never know what's going to be that thing that takes you over the hump. What you got?
I would agree with that. I think you know, we hit on a lot of points. I think as far as bands, you know, some cats will do bands and chains together, and that's okay. I think you should spend 2 or 3 weeks. If you're a beginner lifter, I would do maybe 3 weeks of it and just try to accumulate over those 3 weeks, meaning accumulating add chains or add bands. But you know, do a couple of weeks of chains, you know, do a couple of weeks of heavier bands. Just make sure that, you know, you got adequate spotters and your rack set and all that stuff. Give yourself a week between it and do some rep stuff, do something else. So 2 weeks chains, week off, you know, rep stuff, front squats, whatever, and come back, do the bands, you know, take another week, work on a couple of weeks of skill stuff, and then just see where you are. Take a max lift and see what happens. But again, you're trying to get enough volume to band and chain wise to be more than your regular lifts would be. So you want to be, personally, I think 90. You can be 100, but at least 90%ish Don't work past that on what I'm saying on the second week. So 80, 85, and then the next week do 85, 90. If you're going another week, you might change those numbers up a little bit. But I think if you just plan 2 or 3 weeks of one thing, take a break, 2 or 3 weeks of another thing, do it like that, try progressing that way and see what happens with it. And like Dale said, the thing about once you get the band tension and once your brain kind of goes, hey, all right, this is awesome stuff, you're gonna put it on everything. I mean, we put it on curls, I remember trying to put it on, I never could snatch or do cleans worth a damn because I got short, alligator arms. But I would try to do high pulls with the bands on it. So, and that was a long time ago when my joints weren't really broken up as much as they are now. But again, experiment on those other things because it's going to teach you how to move faster. It's going to teach you how to train harder. So, try to incorporate those in your lifts. And thanks for listening and to the Spud and Dale Tales, and have a fantastic day.